In a webinar, a slideshow appears. On the title slide, Youth at Risk of Homelessness, YARH, Alameda County Social Services Agency, Youth Transitions Partnership, April 27, 2021. Welcome, we are glad you are here. In the lower left corner, Child Welfare Information Gateway. On the left of a white banner at the bottom of the slide, colorful blocks and slanted red lines form a logo of a house with an A-frame roof. Beside the logo, text in light blue reads, Child Welfare Information Gateway. On the right side of the white banner, a logo of 3 people in profile with the words Children's Bureau in dark blue. Now, Burnett Jen Vidrine appears in a small chat window at the top right of the screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jen Vidrine. I'm with the Child Welfare Information Gateway. For those who have joined us before, welcome back. If it's your first time, this is our Youth at Risk of Homelessness webinar series. Today, we're going to be featuring the Alameda County Social Services Agency's Youth Transitions Partnership. We are so excited to have you and for you to continue to learn about the work that these grantees have been doing. Before we get started, I'm going to go over just a couple of housekeeping reminders. So today, all attendees will automatically be muted throughout the entirety of the presentation. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to at any point in the presentation, and you'll simply use the Q&A feature, which is in your panel at the either top or bottom of your screen. So you can use that to ask us questions. If you're running into any issues, our team will be here to answer. We will also have time at the end of the presentation to answer questions for the larger audience. And as a reminder, all of the materials from today's presentation will be shared following the webinar. We are also going to be putting today's PowerPoint into the chat as well, so you should have that readily available to you. All right, so to get us started today, I'm going to turn things over to Jan Schaefer. She's the Director of the Division of Program Innovation of the Children's Bureau, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about the Youth at Risk of Homelessness grant.
Jan Schaefer, a woman with short blonde hair, appears in a small chat window.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, grantees. And I'd like to offer special thanks to Catherine Heath, who has really designed and directed the oversight of this grant program for its inception, and also for her incredible leadership in the area of youth development for the Children's Bureau over the years. The Children's Bureau is the oldest child and youth serving federal agency in the federal government. We celebrated our centennial in 2012, so we're over 100 years old. And we fund the full continuum of services from prevention to permanency. CB has a $10 billion budget, the majority of which goes to states by formula to support their child abuse and neglect programs, foster care, and related programs. A small amount of that funding is devoted to discretionary grants, which is available to us to set funding priorities and establish innovative programs in the field. Those grants go to states, community-based organizations, and for and not-for-profit organizations at the community level. These demonstrations programs support innovations in the field of child welfare, and it's often because of these initiatives that the work and the practice of child welfare is actually changed and improved from lessons learned and from evidence built from those grant programs. We know that youth with a history of child welfare involvement face challenges in their transition to adulthood, including risk of homelessness. The Youth at Risk of Homelessness grant program is unique among the many homelessness prevention programs across federal government in that it really focused on youth with child welfare involvement. It also implemented a phased approach that started from a number of 18, in fact, planning grants, which undertook their work for 2 years, and then through a limited competition, went into the implementation phase. So the phases were exploration and planning, the second phase, implementation and testing interventions. And then now some of the programs are entering summative evaluation. All throughout this program, the projects were refining their approaches and creating visibility to their work to inform the field. And to that end, we're going to focus on implementation of phase 2, where you'll hear from Alameda County and the work that they have undertaken. I wanted to note that these webinars have generated a lot of interest in this program, and to let you know that at this time, the Children's Bureau isn't planning to compete additional grants. So there won't be an opportunity for further implementation. So with this, I will turn it over to Connie to hear from the Alameda County program.
In another chat window, Burnett Connie Linus sits facing her webcam.
I am Connie, and I work for the Alameda County Child Welfare Department, and we are the official grantee, and our program is called the Youth Transitions Partnership. Next slide.
Agenda.
Today, I'll talk about a little bit about the purpose and the grant structure. I included them in the slides so you can have them. You have a copy of the slides. Jan's already given you most of the history, so we'll kind of skim through that. I'll also talk about the intervention and overview of our program, and then I'll turn it over to Annie from our First Place for Youth partner, and she'll give you some case studies. Our formative evaluation will be discussed by Molly from Chapin Hall. Next slide.
Youth at Risk for Homelessness, YARH, Basics.
So the basics of the grant, again, multi-phase program, 18 grantees received a planning grant, and then we were one of 6 awarded to fine tune and test our model. Next slide.
Motivation for YARH.
Motivation is essentially the risk that older youth in foster care experience of housing insecurity later in life. Next slide.
YARH goals.
We were charged with designing a comprehensive model and then testing those models, and we hope that we are and continue to build the evidence base. Next slide.
Focal populations and outcomes.
This is a little bit unique in that our population was 14 to 21, and in many communities that included youth aging out or have aged out at 18. In Alameda County, we have extended foster care, and we have the ability to keep youth in care until age 21. And we are somewhat unique in the state of California and throughout the country in that about 95% of our young people do turn 18 and stay in care and have the opportunity to enter and exit. So if they're exited for any reason, they can re-enter up until age 21. And the outcomes that we are working on: social and emotional well-being, housing, permanent connections, and education and employment. Next slide.
Youth Transition Partnership.
Next slide.
Ytp's service model.
And I'll talk a little bit about the history and our theory of change, and then dive into the eligibility and the components and the supports that young people receive in program.
YARH 1 activities in Alameda.
In our planning grant, we did a lot of data analysis, work groups with experts on each of the outcome areas, community resource mapping. We had a community charrette, which is a fishbowl style discussion with experts having conversation and community members and young people in a large room able to engage in dialogue. And we did that over several days. Next slide.
YARH 1 findings.
We found that we here in Alameda County have a rich array of services. However, our most vulnerable youth were least likely to be referred and least likely to persist in services. Next slide.
Ytp's theory of change.
Our theory of change was that our many youth, despite a rich array of services, do experience risk of housing insecurity and homelessness. There's a lack of service coordination and inconsistent pathways to services, as well as barriers to engagement and persistence in services that are available due in large part to complex trauma that our young people experience. We theorized that if we could provide service coordination and intensive case management, as well as individualized supports, and increase the youth ability to engage in the support systems. And we did that through DBT, which I'll talk more about, dialectic behavior skills, which is an evidence-based practice to help young people with trauma responses. And we theorized that we would experience improvements for young people in those outcome areas. Next slide.
Ytp Partners.
Our partners are, again, First Place for Youth, a local nonprofit that is working directly with the young people, and Chapin Hall is working with our evaluation staff at Alameda County and conducting and guiding the CQI process and the formative evaluation. Next slide.
Ytp Eligibility Assessment.
So who's eligible for the program? We were charged with serving the high-risk youth. And so we did a data analysis of what risk factors our young people experience in our local community. And they were things like age of entry, if you entered care after age 14, if you had placement instability, multiple placements, if you were in congregate care placement or parenting. We also noted a protective factor. We have a very high uptake in THP, Transition Housing Program, funding and allocation here in Alameda County. And while it's not enough, we do have, again, a rich array of services, and youth who are in our THP are receiving services and case management, and we found that to be a protective factor. Next slide. So what are the core components of those youth who are eligible, who have those risk factors mentioned earlier? They receive intensive case management through coaching and dialectic behavior therapy. The intensive case management is coaching and service coordination, so intended to really help with access the array of services that are available, and then coach young people in meeting goals, teaming with important people in their life to set goals in each of the 4 outcome areas, and then get them involved and engaged in DBT. We knew that if we just offered this as a skills group, that it's evidence-based, that we have a lot of confidence that youth will get a lot out of it, and we needed to get youth to it and help them find it relevant to their personal goals. So we knew that we needed those intensive case management relationships. The DBT, we provide skills groups, telephone coaching, and the professional DBT consultation. And I know a lot of folks generally have a lot of questions about DBT. Next slide.
Ytp and Dbt.
We'll talk a little bit about DBT specifically. So we worked in that planning phase that I mentioned. We worked a lot with young people. We had young people, paid youth staff, current and former foster youth, engaged in all of the work groups and conducting focus groups with foster youth and really helping us. And one of the things that they told us is they didn't need another therapist to sit for 45 minutes a week. They really were asking for things like executive coaching and life skills. And when they were approaching age 18 and beyond, they really needed help meeting their goals that they were setting for themselves and not meeting. And they were asking for coaching. And so we call our intensive case management staff. They're working towards licensure as therapists, and they are skilled in DBT, and we call them coaches because that's a big part of what young people wanted. The evidence-based program that we do to Fidelity is a skills group with 3 modules that include distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness, along with mindfulness practice. And the distress tolerance really helps young people kind of what it sounds like, tolerate distress that comes at us and regulate the emotions that happen. Accept difficult emotions because they happen. We don't try to change emotions or pretend that we can have a world in which we'll never feel angry again, but we can choose behaviors that match values, and we can learn to regulate some of those emotions. Youth with such history of trauma and a history of poor relationships and lack of relationships, especially with healthy adults, are very reactive and have a challenging time moving forward in employment, housing, peer relationships, choosing relationships. So the interpersonal effectiveness really helps with choosing healthy relationships and being a partner in those relationships, asking for what you need in a way that gets you what you need. The telephone coaching is important because the coaches are available 24/7. Youth are available, are able to ask for help in a moment of distress. In between the skills groups, which are weekly, they have the capacity to call and say, this thing is happening, and the coach can come in and say, we've been practicing this skill. Let's try to use it. Let's role play. What can you say? How can you handle this? What would you like to do next? How can I help you use the skills that you're learning and that you know on paper to apply to your real life? The Dbt consultation is really important. Our staff come often to the program very interested in Dbt, but not with experience in Dbt. And so we have hired a professional consultant to meet twice a month who does and has been doing Dbt and is intensively trained in Dbt to facilitate the Dbt consultation and provide professional consultation. It's also a part of the model that it's required to have a consultation group of peers, and we've decided to hire somebody to come in and really help guide the process. It's important to note that we are doing 3 of the 4 components that Dbt done to fidelity originally included a 45-minute therapy session with an intensively trained Dbt therapist. Because of the expense and also our young people attending so many meetings and doing so many things and having this coach, we did not include the therapy as one of the components because of more recent research. And this Dbt has been researched for quite a while. There's tons of research on it. And more recently, over the past decade, there's been some research about the capacity to really gain and utilize the skills with telephone coaching and professional Dbt consultation. When it's done to fidelity, that youth are getting a lot of benefit from that. Next slide.
Ytp's program trajectory.
So I want to talk about the trajectory of a young person through the program. I think it's really important for us to highlight the unique enrollment process that we are engaging in. So we identify with data the potentially eligible youth. So we identify who has those risk factors that I mentioned, and who has those protective factors that I mentioned, who is in the right age range, for example. In before times when we used to meet in person, who lived close enough to get to a group every week and meet with their coach. And so we have this list of young people, rather than just sending that list out or asking our child welfare workers who have a high caseload and a lot of court work and other obligations to refer their young people and hopefully, call this number on the bottom of a flyer. We hired an enrollment specialist whose job it is to engage in a recruitment process. And so he calls the child welfare worker, gets some information on the young people, gets an effective phone number, calls the young person, introduces the idea of the program, tells them that we think they'll get a lot out of it, and we're asking a lot of them, and are they willing to give it a try? If they're willing to give it a try, again, and before times they would meet in person, and now it's all online for now. They meet with a coach and the young person and the enrollment specialist so that they can have a conversation, and the coach can describe more about the program, answer questions, talk about, Dbt skills group is required, and here's what we think you'll get out of it, and here's how we can help make it relevant to you and support you in providing, again, rides or now technology to be able to participate online. And I asked the coaches at that first meeting, set up a time. If the young person says, yes, I'm on board, they sign the enrollment paperwork and the consent, then I ask the coach to set up a meeting right then. So if they meet on a Tuesday before the end of the week, hopefully you can have your first meeting right then on your calendar. So they enroll in Ytp, and there's an initial engagement phase before they even get to a Dbt group. They meet weekly with the young person. They complete an assessment and action plan. They conduct team meetings. We do a lot of teaming in Alameda County and hope that they can latch on to a teaming that's already happening. And if it isn't, then, or the action plan that may be in place or case plan that may be in place for a young person, maybe on the older side, they'll conduct a team meeting to get relevant people. And they're spending this time introducing Dbt more relevant to, based on the assessment and those 4 outcome areas. What do we think Dbt can help you with? They start introducing some skills as things are happening to really get them engaged. And then there's the active phase. They meet regularly with young people. They complete assessments regularly and team meetings. Young people attend the Dbt weekly groups. And we ask that they go through the modules twice. It takes about 5 to 6 months to go through all of the curriculum, and in line with the fidelity of Dbt, we ask that they do it twice. And so with the initial phase, if everything goes well and there's a Dbt group starting and available for them, and they attend enough sessions to graduate Dbt and have, you know, maybe a month or so after to solidify those skills and finish up their coaching relationship, about 14 months program. Again, if everything kind of goes well. So next slide.
Ytp Implementation Supports.
This is our, couple people have asked along the way, what is how do the partners work together? What's the kind of org chart, so to speak? So I am the coordinator. I work for the social services agency, and the first place for youth supervisor, who you'll hear from next, and the coaches work for first place, and we refer youth, and they have no right of refusal. So they work directly with the young people. And the Dbt consultant helps the first place for youth, and Chapin Hall's the umbrella, the evaluation. They help with our CQI to bring everybody together and give us the data we need in real time to help us make improvements and move along the program. Next slide.
Case studies.
Thank you very much. So I will pass it over to Annie, who will talk about some specific young people who've gone through the program.
Connie, one moment. I wanted to bring attention to one of the questions in the Q&A. And the question is, what about the mindfulness component you mentioned of CBT? I don't know if you'll cover that later, but I did want to highlight it in issue before we move in.
Oh, sure. I can spend a minute on that. So mindfulness is one of the 4 components that has somewhat specific curriculum. So Dbt has a specific curriculum. Our coaches are all trained in Dbt. And one of the components, one of the modules, so to speak, is mindfulness. And with the young people, often instead of having its own module where every week you practice mindfulness, they do it in the beginning of each module. So in the beginning, the first session or 2 of distress tolerance, for example, the 6-week module, or 8 weeks, they will do a couple sessions introducing mindfulness, practicing some mindfulness. And at the beginning of each Dbt group, they practice a little mindfulness. They start with a little mindfulness. And in the consultation group, actually, they start with mindfulness and they practice leading the group through a mindfulness exercise. And it can be something, for example, like a body scan. This is shown to kind of slow people down and help people who are perhaps having trouble sleeping or just slowing down. And one of the things we ask people to do is to identify their feelings and know what they're feeling so that they can slow that reactive stance down. And one of the ways to do that is a body scan. People can feel things in their bodies, and what do your toes feel like? What do your hands feel like? squeeze and release, and those kinds of exercises. There's a whole series of mindfulness exercises that people can go through and really help the young people. And each of the modules require a little bit of mindfulness. So interpersonal effectiveness requires mindfulness, because you have to know how you're feeling and what you want to ask for and how you want to make a request of this unique person who in a way that they'll receive. And how do you set boundaries? In order to set boundaries, you have to know what your own boundaries might be. And these are things that young people haven't necessarily been taught to practice. And mindfulness gives them one of those skills to do those. And
happy to jump in.
Yeah, I was just trying to read if there was any other questions in the chat, but I'll turn it over.
There is one other, it has to do with fidelity to the program. Often we find transition age youth, they will lean in and out of the program from time to time. Are you also seeing this, and how does it affect the program fidelity? You may also be going to cover that later, so I wasn't sure if you want to answer that now, please do, or if you would like to wait, just know that it's in there.
Connie.
We do have youth coming, youth might go inactive for any reason, they're entitled to return. And Molly can talk a little bit about returning youth and how long it's generally taking. You know, I mentioned that 14-month trajectory if everything's kind of works really well with everyone's schedule and young people's engagement. And, you know, it doesn't always work that way. So for sure that does happen. And Annie can talk more about the specific youth, and she has a couple youth trajectories that she'd like to talk through in terms of youth who go inactive or move and come back, and sometimes come back with much increased willingness and commitment and motivation for the program. So
Thank you, Connie.
Turn it over.
I think so.
Blonde bespectacled Annie Scouten.
Thank you, Connie. My name is Annie Scouten. I'm a licensed social worker. I work for First Place for Youth. I actually was a YTP coach when I started with First Place in 2016, and I've been supervising the program since October.
First Place for Youth, Youth Transitions Partnership.
Slide. And next slide.
Meet Trevor.
So I'm going to share with you today a few stories of our young people. So I'd first want to introduce you to Trevor. Trevor enrolled in Ytp in June of 2018 at the age of 17. When he entered program, he was living in a residential treatment facility for substance use and reported being diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Trevor said that he was also suffering from high suicidal ideations, and he would frequently engage in self-harm behaviors. So focusing on Trevor's strengths and passions of music, poetry, and artistry, his coach worked in partnership with him to identify his values as well as his short and long-term goals. Trevor also reported wanting to complete a gender transition and sign up for gender affirming surgery. So over the course of his time with Ytp, he engaged with his coach, focusing on his education, employment, housing, interpersonal relationships, and gender transition goals. In addition to meeting weekly with his coach for individual sessions, Trevor attended weekly Dbt groups, where he learned skill building around interpersonal skills, distress tolerance skills, and emotion regulation skills. Trevor was able to utilize the distress tolerance skills, which greatly reduced his self-harming behaviors. Trevor has been free of self-injurious behaviors for the last year and has completed his gender affirming surgery, and he now works as a youth advocate, advocating for other youth with foster care experience. He's also working on saving money to find housing for him and his sisters to all live together. And as of today, he has graduated the DBT groups, and he continues to meet with his coach weekly for individual support. Next slide.
A photo of a dark-haired girl. Meet Liz.
So now I'd like to introduce you to Liz. Liz was referred to the YTP program at the age of 14 in January of 2018. She entered foster care at the age of 13 and was living in a group home for foster care youth at the time of entry. She was attending high school and reported struggling with school due to her ADHD symptoms and also reported having a learning disability. Liz actively engaged in regular marijuana use, and she reported a very disruptive relationship with her mother. So during her relationship building phases with her coach, Liz reported wanting to develop skills in managing her anger and to improve her relationships and communication. After a month of building rapport between Liz and her coach and orienting her to DBT, Liz started attending weekly DBT sessions, learning skills to support the goals that she had identified for herself. And it's really exciting to share that Liz almost never missed a DBT group, and she attended 46 DBT groups between 2018 and 2019. And with the support of her YTP team and her county social worker, she was able to utilize the interpersonal skills that she had learned to also create a healthier relationship with her mother. She has since graduated high school and enrolled in college. And even though she graduated DBT groups in 2019, she continued to meet with her coach for individual sessions for an additional year. Before deciding to graduate from the program entirely.
A photo of an auburn-haired young woman. Meet
And
Sarah.
lastly, next slide, I want to introduce you to Sarah. So Sarah is currently a 20-year-old female. She recently graduated DBT groups in January of this year. She first entered program in March of 2017 when she was 16. And she reported at that time that her main challenges were conflicts with peers, providers, and conflicts with others, especially on social media. She ended up leaving the service area. She had moved out of state and was exited from YTP in July of 2017. But then once she turned 18, she actually returned to California and had reached back out to her YTP coach that she was working with and asked to return to the program. So she was re-entered into the YTP program in February of 2019. And she had said that she really just wanted at that time to access all the supports and resources available to her now that she was an adult. So alongside her education and employment goals, Sarah could only identify 3 people in her life that she could rely on and trust, and she desperately wanted to build her circles of support. So being exposed to DBT and the skill-based model, she was able to learn tangible skills that she could use in her own life to build her network of support. She utilizes phone coaching for additional support after hours and has improved her ability to regulate herself through mindfulness and her distress tolerance skills. In addition to meeting weekly for individual and group sessions, she also engages with her coach, with her external partners. So that's her social worker, her therapist, and her court-appointed special advocate. And they all work in partnership together to support her with her treatment plans, and they hold regular team meetings to ensure everyone's on the same page. And she is currently living in a transitional housing program. She is involved with the California Youth Connection Summit, and she also participates in her transitional housing program's internal Young Adult Leadership Council, where she's the voice for many youth in program. So through these activities, she really continues to build her network of support, which was one of her identified goals. Next slide.
Additional highlights.
And just some additional highlights here. So we've seen some of our youth, graduate out of residential treatment facilities, having success navigating the legal systems. We've seen a lot of our youth, get support around just obtaining their driver's license, which may seem simple to us, but can oftentimes pose many challenges for our youth. We've seen youth graduate with their AA degrees and also maintain employment both at the entry level and secondary level work positions. I just want to mention that, progress is not a straight line, and we continue to support our clients, meeting them where they are. We're always uplifting their values and their goals. And DBT is about using the skills to create a life worth living. And so many of our young people have expressed gratitude in being exposed to these skills and having their individual sessions to support applying these skills in their own lives, ultimately supporting them as they transition to successful adulthood.
Formative Evaluation. Now, Molly Van Drunen.
Thank you, Annie. Just quickly before we move on, there's a question about whether all residents at First Place for Youth are part of YTP. Do you want to talk a little bit about First Place for Youth and where YTP fits in?
Annie.
Yeah, First Place for Youth, our main program is the My First Place program. We are a transitional housing program. We're in 6 counties throughout California, so we're statewide. So that's our largest program. In YTP, our capacity is about 30 youth. So it's a smaller program. It's more specific to Alameda County.
Burnett Molly.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
Formative Evaluation.
Thank you. My name is Molly Van Drunen. I am with Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago. As Connie mentioned, we are the local evaluator for this work. So as part of the YARH implementation phase, we conducted a formative evaluation, so a method for evaluating programs during early implementation to inform program improvement and assess readiness for rigorous summative evaluation. The purpose of a formative evaluation is to provide feedback about program functioning and some short-term or proximal outcomes. Formative evaluation can determine whether the program is being implemented as intended and producing expected outputs, and it can reveal whether short-term outcomes are trending in the right direction. So this information helps helps program staff improve and refine the program early and helps to keep it on track as it moves forward in time. Next slide, please.
Research questions.
So during YARH's initial implementation phase, grantees refined and tested their comprehensive service models. They conducted usability testing to determine the feasibility of specific model elements and a formative evaluation to understand what supports and structures were needed to implement the model with fidelity. So the following slides that we'll go over, we'll take a look at our major findings from these research questions.
YTP's CQI process.
So YTP has a continuous quality improvement or CQI process that is designed to systematically rely on research evidence to understand the extent to which the process, the quality, and the capacity investments from the theory of change and logic model are implemented successfully. So practically speaking, there is a monthly meeting of the project partners to review key metrics, to discuss programmatic challenges, and to make plans to address them. So over time, the content of these CQI meetings evolved, as did the questions, the topics, the analyses covered during them. We developed shared language at the very beginning so that these meetings were held with everyone coming to the table with a similar foundation and a shared understanding. And over the course of this work, this CQI work, we moved from asking questions about whether services were happening to whether they were happening with fidelity, and later on to whether we were seeing the outcomes we had hoped to see. Next slide, please.
Study sample and data sources.
We had a total of 469 14 to 20-year-olds in Alameda County who were potentially eligible for YTP between February of 2016 and April of 2019. Of those 469 potentially eligible youth, the formative evaluation focused primarily on the 98 youth who were active in YTP from March of 2016 when the program began through April of 2019. We used several data sources for this work. We used enrollment data, which tracked potentially eligible youth and their progression through the recruitment process that Connie talked about earlier. We used Ytp program data, which provided information about youth assessments, action plans, goals, and services received. We relied on administrative data from Alameda County and also on some qualitative data, so primarily interviews with staff and focus groups with youth. Much of the data was developed and monitored as part of the CQI process for this work. That process ensured that data needed for the formative evaluation were available, that they produced meaningful knowledge about the program, and that they informed ongoing changes to the program during the formative evaluation and beyond that contributed to Ytp's successful implementation. Next slide, please.
Most common risk factors.
As a reminder, the goal was to target a population at risk of homelessness in Alameda County. So these seven risk and protective factors were developed during the planning stage, and a score of 2 or more is required to initiate the enrollment process. So a few things here. The administrative risk assessment was conducted 14 times between February of 2016 and April of 2019. So this graph that we're looking at on the screen looks at the risk factors associated with all youth assessed through this period. Most of the identified youth, 69% of them, had a risk score of 2 or 3, with the 2 most common risk factors being mental health challenges and age of entry into foster care. 88% of identified youth had a risk score of 2 or more, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, all the way up. One other thing to note is that risk profiles did not vary considerably between those youth who were potentially eligible and those youth who actually enrolled. So those 2 groups looked pretty similar. Next slide.
Intensive case management key findings.
So with respect to intensive case management, we had a few key findings. Caseloads consistently stayed below 13 youth for every Ytp coach. Youth and coaches both had really positive things to say about that coaching relationship. The assessment and action plan completion needed improvement, both in terms of how thoroughly they were completed and how quickly they were being completed. And lastly, engagement levels varied by demographics and by risk criteria. So for example, we found that those youth who were more likely to stay in the program for at least 6 months tended to be the older youth, so those who enrolled between the ages of 17 and 20.
Coaching relationship in a young person's words.
So this is a quote from a young person about the coaching relationship in particular. They say, I will tell them if I'm feeling stress or anxiety, and then they kind of refocus my attention, which helps me. And then we'll do the pro and the con and the short term and the long term. And so that really helps me think mindfully instead of thinking in the past or in the future. Next slide, please.
Dbt Key Findings.
So with respect to DBT, there were several key findings. DBT skills groups were occurring on schedule and with fidelity. Youth attendance in those DBT groups improved over the course of the evaluation period. And lastly, youth DBT skills also improved during that same period of time.
DBT in a young person's words.
And so this is another quote from a Ytp participant about DBT specifically. They say, it's just like when you're emotional and you just want to figure out what could you do to go back to being normal. And that's wise mind. The skills that you learn during the weekly groups, they're just giving you another way to deal with it, and it's helpful.
Ytp outcome rating scales.
So the Ytp outcome rating scales are used to measure outcomes across 10 domains, which we'll see in a moment here. The outcome rating scales are completed at baseline every 3 months while a young person is in program, and again at exit. Each domain is assessed by coaches on a 5-point scale from in crisis, which you see here at the far left, to thriving at the far right, with a rating of safe kind of falling in the middle. So as an example, looking specifically at the outcome of permanent connections, just to give you a sense of kind of how this scale looks in practice. An in-crisis rating would read, youth are disconnected from any caring adults, has no support and is not receptive to support in identifying and connecting with relatives or other adults. A rating of safe would read that the youth is connected with adults who are identified as potential lifelong supportive connections, willing to provide emotional support or experiences of youth background. And a thriving rating would read, youth is living with an adult who has or plans to adopt, become a legal guardian, or made a commitment to provide a parental relationship with the youth. The youth is navigating relationships and seeking support.
Outcome rating scales progress.
So these are the 10 domains of that outcome rating scales and the mean scores on each. So here you can see the progress on each domain with the gray circles representing the mean score at baseline and the blue circles representing the last or most recent score. You can see that there was significant positive change in 3 domains in particular, financial literacy, employment, and permanent connections.
Improvement during YTP in a young person's words.
So this is another quote from a young person. This is just about their improvement during YTP. And they say, I'm actually getting to the point where I can say, I actually think my life is going very well. And I don't think I could have done it without the help of this program and the people I've met through it, and also my other providers. Next slide.
Next steps.
So as far as next steps are concerned, we are working on a few activities. We are revising our enrollment materials in an effort to more effectively communicate about the program before and during that enrollment process that Connie talked about. We have tried to redesign them so they are more relevant and representative of the program components and give youth a realistic view of what to expect. We also developed separate materials for child welfare workers and for youth that are tailored a little more to the things that they each want to know about. Second, we are examining the relationship between placement moves or instability and YTP engagement. And then lastly, we are exploring the adaptability of YTP's DBT component, so particularly for culturally inclusive youth with young people, so that younger group, kind of that 14 to 16 range. And so with that, next slide, please.
Questions and discussion.
We'll turn things over for questions. Thank you very much.
Please type your questions in the Q&A, and one just is now there. So are YTP outcome rating scale being used by other programs?
Molly Van Drunen.
The YTP outcome rating scale, I believe, is not being used by other programs. Can somebody correct me if I am wrong on that?
Connie Linus.
We originally developed it and used a lot of the scales that First Place for Youth was already using in their other programs, and kind of based it on things that the training was already in place, but the specific scales are very specific to this program because the outcomes we're trying to achieve are unique to this program. So we determined what the scale of 1 to 5, what each of those would mean and what you would have to answer to be thriving versus that Molly mentioned. That's unique to this program, but conceptually it's being used throughout our community and very specifically at First Place.
Great, thank you. We have one other question now. Are the caseworkers considered coaches? And then how do you become a coach?
Connie Linus.
You want to take that, Annie? By caseworker, I think you mean the intensive case managers who work for First Place, not the child welfare workers who work for our department.
Annie Scouten.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you had mentioned earlier, our intensive case managers are called coaches. And in terms of how do you become a coach, I want to say in order to apply to the open positions, we do require a master's level qualification in counseling of some sort, like social work, MFT. I hope that answered your question.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can you talk a little bit about the financial literacy piece? Are all these skills training beyond DBT skills training?
Annie Scouten.
I mean, I think so. When we first meet with young people, we want to work with them to identify like what their goals are. And, you know, if they identify one of their goals is wanting to be more financially stable, then we definitely have like tools and things that we can do with them to support, you know, those conversations and that the education piece around how to, you know, be more successful with your money. I don't think that there's actually like DBT skills per se that like address financial support. But I think when you're kind of thinking in your wise mind and utilizing DBT skills in the sense that you're thinking, you know, emotionally and logically about how you may, you know, behaviorally use your money, then, you know, that kind of goes into being more financially stable.
And then the next question, got quite a few. How much does caseload impact fidelity, as my program doesn't have the budget for a 13:1 ratio?
Molly Van Drunen.
Yeah, so I think that this is one of the unique things about this program, right, is that it has a pretty small a ratio of clients to coaches. I will say that in the qualitative work we did, so the focus groups with youth and the interviews that we have done with coaches over the years, this is something that has come up in various ways. I think that youth really appreciate having more accessibility to the coach that they work with. So coaches have a little bit more time for the young people that they are working with in this program relative to some others, because the caseloads are relatively small. And so that affords them the opportunity to do more things with the young people that they're working with to work toward the goals that they have for themselves. Youth and coaches both have talked about that. I don't know if Annie, if you have anything that you want to add to that, no pressure. Okay. Let's see. Is this only for your state? Right now, this is only in Alameda County in California, yeah.
Connie Linus.
And California is a county administered child welfare. So we aren't a statewide child welfare department.
Annie Scouten.
I can see the next question is, you know, asking about engagement. So I think what's really important is being able to just clearly outline what the program is and the expectations from the very beginning, and really, you know, utilizing that first phase of rapport building and understanding what is this youth's goals, what do they value, what's important to them, why did they even have a slight interest in this program, and utilizing, you know, those motivations, that intrinsic motivation to support their longevity with our program. And I don't know, Connie, if you want to add something about engagement.
Connie Linus.
Well, we have found from the enrollment side, so we enroll and the enrollment specialist works for me, and then the real kind of initial engagement happens with the coach, but the very first engagement is with the enrollment specialist, and we believe that starts from the very beginning with the first phone call. And we find that if somebody they really trust introduces the program, they may be more likely to even just follow up and respond to Chris's phone call. And so we try to get somebody that they know who thinks that they would get a lot out of the program to possibly introduce it to them. And also, I think absolutely have heard the same thing that Annie mentioned, is just finding some sort of intrinsic motivation that they might have to participate pretty early.
Molly Van Drunen.
I see a question about whether we explored why there was a small decrease on one scale. I knew somebody would catch that.
Outcome rating scales progress.
Thank you for heading back to that. So you can see on the mental well-being and substance abuse scale here, there is a small decrease. We have not explored that in detail, but our hypothesis is that over time, young people are more comfortable talking to their coaches about these things that they may be struggling with. And so as they move along in the program, more information may come out about mental health and about substance use. Thank you.
Questions and discussion.
What challenges and successes surprised you in this approach? I'm going to turn that over to Annie and Connie.
Connie Linus.
You know, one of the challenges that kind of surprised me is the program, to expound on one of the earlier questions about the first place youth being eligible, the youth can follow this program regardless of their housing. And so most of the youth are not in first place housing, actually, and not even necessarily in THP housing, or they've been in THP housing and lost the housing. And so the ability to follow people regardless of their housing, we had this idea, and we certainly knew in our planning grant that a lot of services were attached to housing, but we didn't quite realize how many youth lose all of their important relationships, there, including therapists and case managers, but also groups that they attend. And you know, our THP might have a really good employment program that they just then can't go to suddenly if they lose that housing. And so this is one of those things that they get to keep these relationships and building these skills through DBT, regardless of their housing, as long as they live close enough. Again, before times when they were coming in person, they had to live close enough, and now they've even can move a little bit further afield, which many people, and you know, obviously very expensive to live here. So many people are having to move further afield. I'm happy to turn it over to Annie to see.
Annie Scouten.
I was just thinking in terms of successes, I think what makes this program really unique is we, you know, work through the lens of DBT and really provide that skill-based treatment and that approach. And the youth really just are so appreciative of learning about these skills and being able to have someone support them in implementing these skills in their lives, and then actually utilizing them and seeing them be effective. So I would say that's one of, you know, the successes. Yeah.
The YARH project page website appears briefly on a slide. Molly Van Drunen.
Sorry, was someone speaking?
Connie Linus.
There's a question from Nicole. How does the coach interface with the child welfare worker and other multidisciplinary team members? They get that phone number from Jump, and we ask that it's actually their first call when they get a case, that they make a meeting with the young person, and that they also contact the child welfare worker right away and engage in the teaming. We're doing a lot of teaming in child welfare and child and family team meetings. And so we ask that the coaches attend to those and get those important folks involved and keep the child welfare worker apprised. They have in the past written letters of assessment or things as an addendum to court reports, and attended placement meetings and all of those kinds of things. I'll also just see if Annie has anything to add to the collaborative piece between the child welfare worker.
Yeah,
An
I think
essential relationship.
Annie.
Yeah, what we've seen over the years is that the social workers and the coaches are familiar with one another. So that definitely makes it easier in terms of like as more youth are joining, we're all familiar with who's who and, can support that relationship as well.
On a For More Information slide, a list of names and email contacts. Next, Jen Vidrine.
Well, great. Thank you all. Thank you so much to the grant team and for everyone who's been able to attend and ask questions. We do have some of the contact information here on your screen. We're getting close to time. We want to be respectful of that. So we are going to go ahead and close up today's webinar. Again, we want to make sure that you all who have attended this webinar and others in our series are staying up to date as we provide additional information on our upcoming webinar, including our final webinar, which will be on May 18th, as well as some of the materials that have been shared throughout this entire series. So the best way to do that is to subscribe to our mailing list. We'll go ahead and put that link for folks in the chat. It'll also be included in the presentation that will be sent out later this week. So thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.